My name's Stephen Kildea. I'm a researcher here at Teagasc. I'm a plant pathologist, so I study plant diseases. And potatoes, unfortunately, do get plant diseases too. And I suppose the one that everybody would know about is late blight, or Phytophthora infestans. So Phytophthora infestans, translated from Latin, is actually plant destroyer. And I suppose if we can see the boards, we can actually see exactly why. Because it eats potatoes. It literally works its way through potatoes and kills them. What it is, it's not specifically a fungus, it's very closely related to a fungus. It's what's called a pneumycete. And it has the ability, under Irish conditions, to actually very, very rapidly build up in potato crops and kill it. Why does it actually do it this way? Because I suppose one of the aspects is the Irish weather is generally very, very mild. It's very moist, a lot of rainfall generally during the summer months. And these are the conditions that it absolutely loves. And in 2009, there was one example, or as an example, that actually we would have seen a crop of potatoes here in Oak Park, and a little spot of blight arrived in July, the start of July, and 2 weeks later we had complete wipeout. And for me, this sent a shiver down my back, because I understand this disease. I have a good idea about its dynamics, how it spreads, how it comes about, but I do understand that in 1845, people in Ireland didn't actually know this thing at all. They thought that this was a punishment for God for some reason. We understand an awful lot about it now, but it still is a problem. It is still a problem. It is the #1 disease globally. It has the potential to wipe out plots. As I say, it thrives in Irish conditions. And unfortunately, a lot of the varieties that we use will get some, or we grow, will get some level of disease. That said, because we are about nearly 200 years since the famine, we've actually studied this quite a lot. And that means that we actually know some, and I wouldn't say we know everything about it, but we know a lot about it. And in doing so, that we know that we can actually control it. What do we mean by control it, or what can we do? We can grow varieties that are resistant, so they are able to withstand the disease. We can make sure that actually how we grow this crop actually minimises the amount of disease that might get into it. We grow clean seed. We make sure that we take all the tubers of potatoes out of the field, that nothing overwinters. And one of the things actually I suppose a lot of people will be familiar with is in the Met-Éireann forecast after the news and during the summer months, you might hear an issue about a weather warning. This is based on the forecast, and so actually we know so much about it that we can actually say, okay, if the forecast is going to be very mild, it's going to be very moist, it's going to be rainfall, we know that these are the conditions that are actually going to be favourable to the spread of the disease. And in doing so, then we can target our control practices a little bit better so that we minimise damage potentially to the environment and to the crop. When I say actually we know a lot about it, we only know so much about it, or we only are gaining this knowledge because we're studying it, and studying it quite intensively. And what we do every year within Teagasc is we try and get as much samples, or as many samples from the field, whether that's growers, commercial farms, or whether it's even gardeners. Whether you have potatoes in the back of your garden and you get blight, that is blight that we need to study. So we get our samples in, and we do a barrage of different testing, from fungicide testing, making sure that actually the fungicides that we're telling farmers to use, that they work. We do genetic fingerprinting, so we determine what DNA is there, how different it is. Are the strains coming from gardens the same as the strains that might be in fields, the same in the northeast of the country, the same as down in the southwest. We then look at the mating type to see what the diversity will be in the population. We also look at the varieties, because if we're growing resistant varieties, we need to make sure that they're still resistant every year. Because if we're recommending that you grow a resistant variety, we want to make sure that actually it withstands the disease when it's put under the severe pressure that is the Irish weather conditions. And then finally, we look at how fit these strains of blight are. How fit is it? Will it be very, very aggressive and cause the disease as it did here in 2009? Within 2 weeks we had complete wipeout? Or actually will it be quite slow? Because if it's quite slow, a lot of the spores will get from the leaves down into the tubers. Okay, here in 2009 we had all the leaves were wiped out. We had tuber blight also. But if it's a slower, it may actually cause more tuber blight, because it'll feed more spores into the ground that can cause more blight. So churning all these things together, we hope that we can sort of come out with a better or a greater disease control strategy, whether it's for the gardener or whether it's for the grower in the commercial crop, so that actually, do we improve our resistant varieties, or do we actually make sure that our decision supports in terms of when to put out the fungicides, what fungicides to put out, etc., are better. And doing all this, the aim is that we can improve control and do it in such a way that increases the profitability of the production system while ensuring the sustainability of the production system in terms of the environment.